and welcome. Good seeing you all. Okay, so this week's parasha is Parashat Vayehi, and the parasha isn't just a. Every week the parasha isn't just a telling us a story of what happened in the past, but in reality, the parasha is giving us a deep insight into the world that you and I live in today, currently, and it gives us a little bit of a power to reflect on who we are and where we're going. So when we begin a parsha, we could start with those words, Ve'ele Shemot B'nai Israel. But to start there, in this week's, sorry, that's actually next week's parsha. To start this week's parsha, Vayehi Yaakov, to appreciate where we are, let's take a step back for a second. We left off last week with Yehuda approaching Yosef and fighting for his brother Binyamin. Parsha ends with the brothers coming up to going down to the land of Egypt and settling in the land of Goshen. Parasha ends with Vayeshev Yisrael be'eretz Mitzrayim be'eretz Goshen, and the Jews settled in the land of Egypt and the land of Goshen. V'yachazuba v'yifruvu ma'od. They acquired property there, and they were fruitful and multiplied greatly. Lots of people moving in to, their community is growing, their family is growing, and so on and so forth. Parasha begins like this: Vayehi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim. And Yaakov lived in the land of Mitzrayim, Sheva Esre Shana, for 17 years. Vayehi Yemei Yaakov Shnei Chayav Sheva Shanim V'arba'im Me'at Shana. And Yaakov lived for 147 years. He was 147 years old. V'yikravu Yemei Yisrael, and his time was coming to die. Lamut v'yikra levno Yosef. He calls to his son Yosef. Vayomer, and he says to him, Imna matzati chen be'enecha. If you find favor in my eyes, simna yadcha. Place now your hand tachat yerchi, under my thigh. Vasiti imadi chesed. Do a chesed with me. Chesed ve'emet, a kindness and a truth. And he asks as follows: he says, Al na tikriveni b'mitzrayim. Please do not bury me in Egypt. V'shachafti im avotai, for I will lie down with my fathers. Unshatani, and you will transport me mimitzrayim from Egypt. Ukraftani bekruftam, and bury me in their tomb. V'yomer anochi yasecha lekadrecha, and he said, Yosef says, I myself will do as you have asked. Then that's not enough. Vayomer, he says, Yaakov says, Hishavali v'yishavalo. He says, swear to me, and he swore to me. Yishtachavu Yisrael al rosh hamita, and then Israel bowed down at the head of his bed. Okay, let's unpack this for a little bit. A couple of things over here. Number one, Parashat Vayechi is the last parasha in the book of Bereshit, book of Genesis. Okay, it is a parasha that is talking about the stories of our ancestors. It tells us a little bit about the beauty of where we come from, the stories of these amazing people. It tells us that the Sefer Bereshit is also known as Sefer Yeshurun, the Sefer of straightness, because we see the straight character of the people that we come from. It's a trait that you and I are trying to bring into our own lives. So, having said that, we know there's something called Parashat Stuma and Parashat Petucha. That means when we're looking at the Sefer Torah, you'll notice that the way in which the fonts are organized in a way where there's a little bit of a gap. But this is a closed parasha, which means that if you look at the previous parasha to this one, it's like one continuous block. And everyone asks why. Why is this parasha stuma? This is Rashi's question. He says, Lama parsha zu stuma? Why is this parasha closed? Shekivan Sheniftar Yaakov Avinu nistamu enehem, because Yaakov dies, the eyes of the Shvatim, ve'anehem ve'libam shel Yisrael mitzeret shibud, their eyes and their hearts were closed because of the challenge, the pain, the difficulties of the shibud itself. Shidchilu avotam, that they started serving. Davar acher. Another idea over here, he says two ideas. One is number two, Shibikesh legalot et ketz. He wanted to reveal to them the end of the days, Lamanat, his children, and that information was closed and blocked off from him. Now, let's go back again. So he's saying two things here. Number one is the reason why it's Parashat Stuma, to teach you that this is the end. All beginnings have an end. All good things come to an end. But he's also coming here to tell us something powerful. Yaakov lived a life from beginning until end, and every moment, Vayehi Yaakov, he lived. And these were his days. Okay, he is living a full life of 147 years of life, and every day were full days. How did he live? Veyu yimei shnei chayav. His days were days of life. What does it mean to live a day of life? To live a day of life means a day that is fulfilling your mission. A day that you're able to go ahead and express the best parts of who you are, the best midot, the most sensitive parts of your essence of your being mindful of the wants and the needs of the people around you, being aware of the needs of the people that surround you. That is what it means to live a full life, not a life of superficiality, a life in which you're only thinking about yourself, but a life where you're able to go ahead and really enjoy every moment. Every moment is so exciting for us. But in a world where we're living a life of superficiality, and we're just trying to think about how we're taking from the world around us, the life becomes empty, null, boring. I can't fill an hour with enough time of things to do when I'm absolutely, completely disconnected from my particular mission. So it's called stuma because it's closed, to remind us that all great things come to an end. Even the book of Genesis comes to an end, and it comes to an end in a very, very powerful way, because you have this trilogy of people, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Okay, and it culminates in this ending of this trilogy, right? These three amazing men who are, each represent a different kind of trait. Yaakov has his 12 sons that represent the 12 tribes, and now it's all coming to an end. He wants to reveal the end, but he can't. He wants to go ahead and reveal to them what's going to happen in the end of times, but he can't, because ultimately, if we are focused on all the way at the end, we'll be distracted. Parasha is teaching you that if you want to live a life of meaning, stop looking out into the future, stop worrying about tomorrow, and start worrying about today. Success comes to those individuals who make the most of this moment in time, not some other moment in time. It's this moment in time. When we make this moment in time a meaningful moment in time, that is how we're able to live a full life. Now, the Midrashim tell us some amazing things. Number one is that people did not die of sickness until this particular time in history. When Yisrael's days were coming to an end, right? It's unique to Yaakov. Midrash tells us that up until Yaakov Avinu, when someone was about to die, what happened? They sneezed and hapchu, and they blew their soul out of their nostrils, and that was the end. This is where the custom is of saying God bless you. This is an old source. This is in a midrash 2,000 years ago, that it used to be people never got sick. There were no viruses that were able to slow us down. We didn't die from those kinds of things. You just sneezed and your soul was blown out of your body. Yaakov asks to change this. He says, listen, you know what? I want people to have time. He asked God, please let me know before I die. Let me know before this comes to an end. Reminds me of a story. It was many years ago. There was an airplane that blew up. It was an accident. Iran blew up a plane. And there was a newscaster who said something like, when a missile hits a plane like 30,000 feet in the air, everything happens instantaneously. The people on the plane didn't even know that their plane exploded because they died so quickly. And he was saying that like a good thing. But according to this, we're saying that's a bad thing. Why would you want to know that your time is coming to an end? And the reason for this is because we believe that every single moment of life is an opportunity to do teshuvah. It's an opportunity to grow. And even if the Gemara says that there's a sword on your neck, right? And there's no way to escape it, in that few moments, you have the power of completely transforming who you were and where you're going. There is always going to be hope. There's always going to be an opportunity for you to grow. And therefore, we want to know at the end, because for a Jew to say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, is a powerful experience. Jews said those words walking into gas chambers, knowing it was their last minute. Yaakov is telling you again this concept of use your time wisely, stop wasting, stop looking into the future, take possession of the now, and you will find yourself living in a world of bracha. It's interesting to note also, if you paid attention, it says in the pasuk of Yikrevu Yemei Yisrael Lamut. And Israel's days were coming to an end. He was coming to die. V'yikra lebnei Yosef, he calls his son Yosef, V'yomer lo, please swear to me. And then at the end of it, it says, what? Yaakov. But Yomer, Yaakov says it. So which one is he? Is he Yaakov or is he Israel? Why are we interchanging his name? With Abraham, once the Torah stops using the name Avram, and we call him Abraham, we never use the old name. We're always using the new name. But with Israel, with Yaakov, we're going back and forth, and the question is why? Chachamim tell us that Yaakov represents his physical mission, whereas Yisrael represents his spiritual mission. And we're going back and forth because he has two powerful missions to accomplish in this world. One is the power of conquering the physical world, which is settling the roads, building governments, creating a business, creating a world where we're caring for the others, doing chesed. But we also have a spiritual mission in this world. And that spiritual mission is the development of the self, development of our midot, being patient, being kind, understanding, loving, giving. With those two aspects at the forefront of our minds, this is how we create an amazing world. This is how we create a world of beauty. This is how we create a world of excellence and perfection. This is how we create a world of real harmony and love, where we're able to see and recognize that each human being is created in the image of God. But when we don't have clarity in our mission, we don't have clarity as to where we're going, we create a world of destruction. And this might help us understand this next part over here. After Yosef, Yaakov makes Yosef swear that he's not buried in Egypt. And the Chachamim say the reason why he didn't want to be buried in Egypt is because he was too afraid that they would worship him as a deity, they would turn into a god. Midrash says that he did not want to experience the plague of lice, which impacted the bodies that were buried there. That he did not want to have there's this concept in Kabbalistic circles that when Techiyat HaMetim happens, when the resurrection of the dead happens, it says that all the bodies are going to resurrect out of the earth of Israel. The resurrection doesn't happen if you're buried in America. What would end up happening, or in Russia or wherever you're from, your bones would have to travel through these underground channels, and you're going to grow out of a place called Israel. And therefore, he says, you know what? I understand. I see this is going to happen. The resurrection of the dead will happen. I don't want my bones to go through that traveling. It's supposed to be an uncomfortable experience, whatever that means, of course. We're talking about spiritual things. And he says, bury me there. Fine. Yosef says, I'll do all these things. After these things have passed. Yosef, someone says to Yosef, your father is ill. Yaakov, Yosef takes his two sons, et Menashe et Ephraim with him. He says to Yaakov, I am Yosef, your son, who's coming to you to chazek Yisrael v'yeshev al mitah. He sees him, he's sat up, and he's sitting on his bed. He says, God has appeared to me, beluz in luz, be'eretz Canaan v'yivarach, and he blessed me. Okay, he says, great. He says, now, you know what? Fast forward a little bit. He says, give me your two sons and let me give them a blessing. And we know that the blessings of each of the tribes are mentioned in this week's Torah portion. Now, what's interesting is that when you read these things, they really don't sound like blessings. As a matter of fact, most of what's happening over here is a criticism of each of the Shvatim. This is, you're angry, you're lazy, he goes through all kinds of criticism of the nature of these individuals, these Shvatim, these great people. And the question is, why are we calling them brachot? Why do we call it tochacha? Why do we call it rebuke? Why are we calling these things bracha? And that's number one. Number two is, this is interesting. We know that on Friday night, we make the bracha of Yisimcha Elohim K'Ephraim U'Menashe, right? We should bless our children like Ephraim and Menashe, right? But if you see over here, when Yaakov gives him a blessing, there is no blessing to Yosef. These are the two sons you had in Egypt. Ad bo'i, before my coming, alecha to you, Mitzrayim lihem, they were to me, Ephraim and Menashe, Reuven and Shimon Yuli. They're like Reuven and Shimon. Okay, why? He doesn't say. And your progeny, asher halata achareichem, that who you will have after them, Lecha yiyu al shem achehem yikru b'nachlotam. They will also be part of the brothers, which means this is Yaakov saying that Ephraim and Manasseh are part of the 12 tribes. But there's no bracha for Yosef. This is important. Number one, the reason why Yosef has no bracha, it's simple. Because the greatest blessing a dad can get, a mom can get, is knowing that their children are blessed. Okay, there's no greater blessing knowing that your kids are taken care of. There's no greater blessing knowing that the people that you are caring for are doing well. Yaakov does not need to give a blessing to Yosef because the blessing goes through his children. Okay, but how do we answer the question of why doesn't Yaakov give them a blessing? Why doesn't he tell them, you're going to be blessed, you'll have money, you'll have power, you'll have health, you'll have strength, you'll have many, beautiful children, right? They all got blessings, but it's interesting, if you read them, they won't seem like blessings to you. It seems like, again, like criticisms. You want me to read some of them to you? I'm happy to do so. But, you look at, he says, this is in, if you want to find it, it's in chapter 48, verse 1. Mem tet aleph. Yikra Yaakov banim. He calls Banav, he calls his children. Yomer sifu v'yigidu lechem et asher yikru etchem achrei hayom. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen in the times, but he knows he doesn't. Okay, Reuven b'chari, Reuven, my son. Ata kochi, you're my strength, the first. Oni, of my vigor. Yeter she'et v'yeter az. Exceeding in rank and exceeding in power. Now listen, you see, okay, that's very nice, right? Pachaz kamayim al totar. Impetus like water. You cannot exceed. Ki, because alita, you mounted mishkavi avicha, the bed of your father. Az chalalta yitzui Allah. You desecrated, my couch, and that's how he ends it. Shimon v'levi achim klei chamas. Your brothers, your tools, you stole from Esav and their weaponry, B'Sdom and the conspiracy. He's just criticizing all of them. Yehuda, ata yaducha achecha sheiducha. He is giving somewhat of a blessing, but it sounds more like musar. So how is this a blessing? And I want to end with this idea. We talk about eternal blessings. We talk about blessings all the time. And we ask for blessings. We make brachot. We do all sorts of things to kind of like feel that we're doing what is right. We want blessing. We want Shefa to come down to us. This is a powerful idea, okay? And I want you to pay attention to this idea. The idea is like this. There is no greater blessing than knowing who you are. There is no greater blessing than knowing your weaknesses and your strengths. Why? Because once you know who you are, once it's clear what your weaknesses and strengths are, then you have the power of bringing that shefa into the world. Most people, unfortunately, don't know who they are. Most people are lost. Most people surrender to their base nature. Most people don't have a clear path moving forward. But when it's clear to you who you are, it's clear to you what is missing. When it's clear to you that these are the things that you are suffering from, right? Then you could respond through growth. You could respond in action. So it's true that it seems like a criticism, but for Jews, we recognize that yes, we are far from perfect beings, but when we're aware of that imperfection, we have the power of overcoming that imperfection and becoming something more. That is an eternal blessing. The eternal blessing is Yaakov Yisrael. The fact that Yaakov knew that he had a unique mission. It was clear to him. So he couldn't go ahead and reveal the end of time to the children. He couldn't tell them what was going to happen at the end. So what better, what more profound expression of a bracha is, you know what? I can't tell you what's going to happen. But what I could do is I could give you the keys to help you create a future that will express this deep, profound expression of greatness, your unique mission. All the money in the world is useless if your children hate you. All the money in the world is useless if you're unhealthy. Power, money are great tools, but ultimately, real success is when you're able to look back at the end of your life and feel great about the time you spent here, feeling great about the legacy you've left behind. There's a story, a famous story told of a father and a son walking through in the forest, and the father finds a bunch of leaves in the fall time, picks it up. He says, "You see these?" He's like, "You think that these leaves are better than the leaves on the tree because they're free to go wherever they want. They're not tied down to anything. They're not anchored to anything, right? They're in a much better position. But in reality, these leaves will wither away and die." And the leaves that are on the tree, which feel confined and stuck, right? They're being nourished by the tree. It's true that there's a trade-off over here. Maybe this week's parsha is called Stuma, is because, it has to do with the fact that we live in a world which conceals its truths, right? We understand what we need to do. It's clear that we need to work on ourselves. It's obvious that there's in the back of our minds when we're just at peace and we're not distracted, and we have so much we need to do to build ourselves up. But we're like the leaves. We want to be free. We want to remove ourselves from the source. We want to remove ourselves from the thing that it brings us life. And in that process, we trade off freedom for real happiness. So the Parsha begins with, these were the days of Vayehi Yaakov Eretz Mitzrayim. These were the days that he lived in Egypt, right? And we know it's called the Parsha Stuma. It's closed section. The brothers end up descending into lower levels after Yaakov dies. We know that the shibud begins after he dies, that when Yaakov and all the brothers die, that is when the slavery, the shibud, begins, right? What is the worst kind of slavery that can exist? It's not a slavery of your body. It's not hard work. It's not the tsa'ar of digging, the pain of digging and working hard hours. That's not slavery. The worst slavery that can possibly exist, my friends, is the slavery of the enslaving of our minds. What makes you special and unique is your power to choose. When you limit that choice by just continuously distracting yourselves from being able to express the best parts of who you are, you surrender to being a human being. You want to tap into being a Jew, Yisrael. You want to struggle with angels and survive. That's what it means to be a Jew. The biggest, most profoundly annoying demons that you and I fight and face daily are the ones that come from within. My blessing to each of you, if you want an eternal blessing, is be clear about who you are. Recognize your weaknesses, recognize your strengths, and be relentless about figuring out how you can become something more. Don't worry about 10 years from now, 20 years from now. Worry about the next 24 hours. Have a plan for the next week and 30 days. And then slowly, with small steps, you'll see yourself looking back, living a life of true happiness, of true success. Wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom Mevarach. Thank you so much for listening. God willing, we'll see you next week on Oxygen for the Soul.